that was
panache.
the other one I was going to bring up, Swashbuckler. That's really unfortunate that nothing works well with that because this is another this is what I picture a swashbuckler is, two rapiers fighting, two guys on a ship's mast or something.
And fun fact, all of your features don't work if that's the case. Because there are
Yeah.
two ally enemies within 5 feet of each other, so just the entire subclass is still trash. Who would have guessed? Swashbuckler, what garbage?
Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're going to be talking all about two-weapon fighting in D&D.
Yeah. Just if it is, everything you need to know about it. If you're like, I want to play Dritz Duerden, or if I want to play Melinaway from Hades 2, she attacks with a sickle and a dagger, and you want to mimic that fighting style, what does that look like in D&D 5e? How do you get it to work? What are the things and build around options you have? What's the minimum input? How does it actually physically, mechanically work? All that should be covered in here in some loose. You should walk away with this with a sound understanding of how that fighting looks in
All
Dungeons
right,
and
good.
Dragons 5th
I'm
edition.
glad we're doing this because I remember when we talked about the two-weapon fighting style. We talked about the dueling. Was that a feat or another fighting style?
There's throw weapon
Or
fighting, two weapon fighting, dueling is a fighting style. All those are
right.
fighting styles. There's dual wielder, which is a feat that we'll touch
That's
on
what I was
here.
thinking of. Yes. Yeah, I always get confused and the differences between them and how they relate to this.
Yeah,
So,
this should give you all of the bare bones information. Commenters down below, I am sure I have missed some awesome synergy features that you use when you're two weapon fighting builds. Comment down below what you also would recommend for people that are taking two weapon fighting as a play pattern, as something they want to take onto their characters.
and
So
there is going to be a written version of this that'll be linked in the description below. So if Sam's talking too fast, that you can read along at home.
perfect. I think it's probably relevant to start at what does it mean? What is two weapon fighting whenever we say that? Because it isn't specific, like it's fighting with two weapons, right? But that means something in D&D specifically.
Okay.
Specifically what it means is you're fighting with two light weapons, or down the road, a light weapon and a non-light weapon. In one hand, and it is melee ranged. So things like the hand crossbow has the light property.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, because specifically in the two weapon fighting rules, I have it written on the piece. It only qualifies for melee weapons, so the light property does, from my understanding, literally nothing on a hand crossbow. Don't know why it's there, but it is. So hey, yeah, sure, why not?
Maybe if you wanted to beat somebody with it, if you run out of bolts.
Sure. In that instance, you can use it as an improvised weapon with the light
Yeah.
property, I guess. The physical rules say whenever you take the attack action, when you take the attack action and attack with a light melee weapon that you're holding in one hand, you can use a bonus action to attack with a different light melee weapon that you're holding in the other hand. You don't add the ability modifier to the damage of the bonus attack unless the modifier is negative. It also says if either weapon has the thrown property, you can throw the weapon instead of making either melee attack with it. Meaning, if you're ever fighting with any two light weapons with thrown property, you can throw both of them. One is as long as you made the attack with the light weapon, even if you throw it, you can make the offhand attack with the bonus action.
That's another clarification to that question we had before about crossbow expert, where somebody was saying, you don't apply the ability bonus damage to the second hit. This what they're referencing here is two weapon fighting, and that is specific to melee weapons.
Yeah, this is a specific way you engage with bonus actions.
Yes.
I have a little section on who can use two weapon fighting. Everybody. Literally every single character in the game comes baked in with this mechanic, and almost every character in the game gets proficiency with daggers. And daggers are a light weapon with a thrown property that you can always use as an offhand attack if you make an attack with another dagger in your main hand.
All right, you said
got two
almost.
daggers?
Is there anyone that isn't proficient with daggers?
Wizards or sorcerers, maybe. That would be my guess.
I mean, that's just a tool more than it is a weapon.
Sorcerers get daggers. Do wizards get daggers? Maybe it is literally every single class in the game gets dagger proficiency.
I would think so.
But I'm not positive. Oh, it's according to wizards. The wizards do not get dagger. Oh yeah, it's literally the first one listed. Literally the first one. I just like, where is it? It's right there. So yeah, maybe every single class gets dagger proficiency. In any case, if you can use a light weapon, you can fight in two weapon fighting.
Okay.
Again, the prereq, you have a different light weapon in each hand. They can be the same kind of light weapon, so you can have 2 daggers, you can have 2 scimitars, you can have 2 whatever. All those will work. The comprehensive list of weapons that work with 2-weapon fighting in this game is very short. It's 7 in total. There's clubs, daggers, hand axes, light hammers, sickles, scimitars, and short swords. Scimitars and short swords notably are martial light weapons, so they are martial melee weapons that are only accessible if you have martial weapon proficiencies or those specific proficiencies, which some classes like rogue get. Druid gets scimitar proficiency as an example. There's a pretty clear divide as to like what are the best options, and it is what are the best dex-based options, what are the best strength-based options. The best strength-based option is the hand axe. It just is. It's light thrown weapon. It's got 20 over 60 range, and it does a d6 slashing damage. And every other option is just that or worse. So if you want to use strength and fight with 2-weapon fighting, hand axes are your best friend. Otherwise, if you're using finesse weapons, because you're using dexterity-based stuff, the finesse trait lets you use dexterity in place of strength, you're going to be looking for sword swords and scimitars as your melee options, because they do d6 damage, or daggers, because they go the thrown property and they do d4 damage. Now, if you don't have proficiency with the, if you don't have proficiency with the martial weapons, you're going to have to lean on the d4 finesse weapon. The only one with finesse is daggers, so that's just what you're left with if you are a dexterity-based character.
Okay.
So far, so good? All the weapons you use
Yep,
2-weapon
yep.
fighting, how basic mechanics work?
Short list, yes.
Yes, this is an important topic to cover as well, and it's how do you like draw weapons? When does that occur? I wanted to quickly point out the rules to that. So it says you can interact with one object or feature of the environment for free during your move or your action. And they give the example when you could draw a weapon as part of an attack action. So you could draw a weapon as part of the attack action. Now, it also states if you want to interact with a second object, you need to use your action, which means if someone gets a drop on you and you're a 2-weapon fighter and you don't have any weapons in your hands, you cannot draw both normally and make attacks with both the same round. You can only draw one, so you will miss the bonus action attack if you don't have them at least one weapon out whenever someone gets a drop on you. Figure that's relevant and important for 2-weapon fighting. Something to keep in mind.
I mean, important to just cover all our bases, but have you ever used these rules?
Yes.
No. All right. I have not. I've never been at a table where drawing weapons mattered at all.
So a lot of the time, the way encounters shake out at my tables are people know a fight's happening and draw their weapons, and that's just like an assumed intro to it. But there are definitely been moments where players have got caught with their pants down and they didn't have their weapons out, and the person that had 2-weapon fighting could not draw them both by rules as written. So, just it'll vary table to table. I imagine most encounters this is not going to matter, but it is, especially if you're using thrown weapons, this matters a lot.
Sure.
Now, we can talk about the most common features that empower 2-weapon fighting, and then where you can kind of get them. So 2-weapon fighting style is the most obvious one, and rangers and fighters all get access to this. There's also a feat called fighting initiative or something that gives you a fighting style. That will also give you this if you want. And what it does is it lets you add the damage modifier of add the ability modifier of the attack roll of your offhand weapon to its damage. Basically meaning normally you don't add your strength or dex to hit, or you don't add your strength or dex to damage on your extra attack. Right. This lets you add it to that extra attack. So you attack with the attack action, bonus action, make your dagger attack. Normally you wouldn't add a +3 because of your dex mod. Now you get to add that +3, which is your dex mod. It's great. It's a boon that you're going to want if you want to do this thing, generally speaking. We have a review on it on this channel, I believe, and it is very front-loaded.
All the fighting styles.
Yeah. It's really good in the low tiers. It gets worse as the game progresses, generally speaking. This entire archetype kind of gets worse as the game progresses, but it's good enough that most tables aren't going to have any issues. You're going to have a fun time playing it if you want to do this kind of thing. Any thoughts on 2-weapon fighting? The style?
Yeah, it's pretty cut and dry. It's you definitely, if you want to lean into this type of character, I mean that little bit of extra damage adds up over time.
Oh, absolutely. Like, especially if you're going level 1 from like a d6 +3 to a d4 to a d6 +3 to a d4 +3, that extra +3 is like a quarter more damage. Like you're getting a gigantic numeric boost to your average damage output. And if you're missing and the other attack's hitting, it feels a lot better when it connects. You're not rolling 1 damage anymore. You're rolling minimum 4 damage, which feels so much better. The other option that you get for fighting styles is thrown weapon fighting. This one actually is relevant because as there are only 7 weapons with light property, most of them are thrown, at least most of the good ones are thrown, right? So you're going to have daggers as the most common one. That has range 20 over 60, so no disadvantage within range within 20 feet, and you can make it range attack rolls with it with disadvantage within 60 feet. So if it's 21 to 60 feet, disadvantage with the attack rolls, that's how throw weapons work. Throw weapon fighting, lets you draw thrown weapons as part of every attack you make with them, which pairs really well with 2-weapon fighting, because you can attack, throw 2 weapons with your action if you're level 5, draw another one as a bonus action, and throw that too. And there's no, you can just keep picking things up, throwing them like crazy, just, unload the bag worth of daggers at people if you so desire. Plus, every time you hit with a ranged weapon attack using a thrown weapon, you get +2 damage on it. So if you want to do the 2-weapon fighting thing and you want it to be based on thrown weapons, like if you want to go in on hand axes and just chuck those things, this gives you +2 to each of them, including the offhand one. Even if you don't have the other fighting style, as long as you're throwing the hand axe, you're getting +2 to damage. So it kind of covers what 2-weapon fighting does in a fashion, which is neat. It's an option that I think you should consider if you want to go in mainly on thrown stuff.
Yeah, that's. I think I was a little bit sour on these on all these because I'm just not a fan of the thrown weapon fighting fantasy.
Hmm.
But
I
yeah, this
love
is
random
definitely
bullshit
if you
go.
want to do that. What's that?
I love random bullshit go.
Yeah,
You just pick a bunch of crap and throw it at people. It's a great time.
yeah. If you want your character to do that, then this is definitely worth considering.
Yeah, normally it's worse than I will also mention this. This archetype isn't mechanically as powerful as a lot of the other ones. That doesn't mean you can't have a good time with it. Doesn't mean it can't be somewhat powerful, especially if you like look into adding these little extra odds and ends to improve it. Another feat that you get that is technically the feat aimed at 2-weapon fighting is Dual Wielder. So it gives you a bonus AC while you're wielding 2 weapons. It lets one of those weapons not be light, which basically upgrades the die size because it's also be one-handed. So you'll go normally to a longsword or a rapier, depending if your strength or dex. So you now have a D8 weapon and a D6 weapon. Generally speaking, is what'll happen with that. And then you also get you can draw 2 weapons instead of 1 weapon whenever you would draw an item. So now if you do get your caught with your pants down, no problem. You have them both out. Rarely is going to come up, but it could. All in all, I don't love this feat, but if you're in the market to improve specifically this aspect, especially if you've already maximized your dexterity or strength, whatever you're attacking with, this is fine. It's we have a review on this one as well.
I like this one. This is I mean, if you want to play this way, then I think this is a completely legitimate choice. This really broadens your weapon options. Like
I
if
think
you,
usually this looks like a +1 AC, right? Because you're still using one of the light weapons and the other one's a non-light weapon. And the difference in
yeah,
damage is literally a D8, or like a D8 to D6, right? That's not a huge upgrade.
okay, yeah, that's true. Unless unless you get like magic weapons later on down the line and they're not a dagger or a hand axe, then
True. This lets you use cool magic longswords and stuff if you'd rather, which
yeah,
is neat. Especially there are a lot of magic daggers, generally speaking, but if you end up
yeah,
in the position where you want it, this is entirely harmless feat to take. It's going to be very close to getting a +1 to whatever your primary attack modifier is. You can think of it like the upgraded dice size is like +1 damage. The upgraded AC is like +1 to dex. Kind of gets how your AC works out anyway. So again, that's why I like it when you already have that 20. If you got 20 strength or 20 dex, it's where I think you start wanting dual wielder, but you can take it earlier if you like the thematics of it. I think it's fine. There's one other main feat that I wanted to point out here. It's because there's if you're doing 2-weapon fighting, there are a lot of I do a lot of 2-weapon fighting on places like Warlock, places like Bard, and Warcaster is really relevant to both of those kinds of characters because this lets you cast spells with somatic components while you're wielding 2 weapons. So you don't really lose all that much flexibility for having 2 short swords, for having 2 daggers, for wanting to do thrown weapon stuff and cast your spells. Plus, it helps you maintain concentration on things. And
yeah. That's
even if
the primary focus of it.
yeah, things like Ranger that want to have a Hunter's Mark down and engage in 2-weapon fighting, this is a way that you're more likely to keep that Hunter's Mark up for a couple of rounds to get the 4, 5, 66 you want out of it, round over round. It's a good feat. Would recommend it. And I think it definitely goes in this spot for melee range, spellcasty kind of hybrid options. A lot of the spellcasters like this because they don't get extra attack that easily, or if they do get extra attack, it's like a little bit down the road. They don't get a lot of other supporting like great weapon master stuff or sharpshooter stuff. So this is a way to sort of have that hybrid sword sorcerer fantasy work out pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad that's in there. That's in there. But I mean, Warcaster's great just for the concentration benefits alone.
I do think like it uses that a little bit extra upgrade here specifically because of the somatic component thing, right? Like you actually can cast your spells this way. If you want to cast spells while doing 2-weapon fighting, this is kind of important.
Yeah.
Other feats to note, I think, these are all like a lesser degree relevant to 2-weapon fighting, but they all technically apply with it. So I figure I just rattle them off. There's Crusher, Piercer, Slasher. All those care about damage types. They're a reason if you want to use Crusher for light hammers, go for it. That's a reason to use the bludgeoning weapons there. Then what I actually like a lot that's not that good, but again, I like it a lot is Savage Attacker. I just like rerolling my dice when they're ones, and this lets you do that. This lets you reroll once a turn a die you don't like, on a damage die, I should say, not an attack roll. So,
yes,
if you're making 3 attacks and you roll a 6, a 4, and a 1, you get to reroll the 1. Hey, that's sweet. Like that.
I'm gonna ask you on Crusher, if you throw a light hammer at somebody, do you get the push with that as well?
Sure do.
That's fun.
Yeah. Once per turn, we hit a creature with attack that deals bludgeoning damage.
All right.
That counts. So yeah, you can do some cool stuff if you want to just like yeet 1,000 light hammers at somebody and push them back a bunch. That sounds fun to me. Is it good? An
And
indie,
then
but it's cool.
and then hire a crew to help build your house. Just got a bunch of hammers.
You have 1,000,000 hammers.
Yeah.
Last big section that I think is like worth talking about as far as the basics of 2-weapon fighting. We've talked about how it mechanically works, how you're gonna approach it with the characters, is the classes that like it and the classes that can use it on. I think if you take anything away from this video, I would take away this. Every character can use it, and it is a bonus action you always have available to you. There's a real benefit to keeping a pair of daggers on you, as basically everyone, because sometimes you're going to run out of spell slots. Sometimes you're going to be in a sticky situation and need to do 2 points of damage. And having that extra chance to hit is useful. It is handy. There'll be times where you will find, I need to throw something else here. I want to get as much damage down as possible. I'm going to, we know I'm going to be charging over a field as a barbarian or whatever. I'm just going to chuck 2 light hammers at somebody because I can. Even if they're at disadvantage, I need something to do with my action. That's a place with my action and my bonus action right now. It's going to be a useful tool if you want to just like get a little bit more out of every character you play. I like putting a pair of short swords on anyone that can have short swords for this reason. So yeah, I would take that away from this video. There are like actual reasons to go into each of these classes with 2-weapon fighting though. A bunch of classes get cool payoffs for it. We can just go down the list alphabetically if you'd like.
Let's do that.
There are a few that I don't think are particularly notable or like there's much worth talking about in them. That's Artificer, Cleric, Monk, Sorcerer, and Wizard. None of those classes necessarily get boons to doing the 2-weapon fighting thing. Like they can work with 2-weapon fighting. There are going to be monks that will be attacking with 2 weapons, but it's going to be worse than their martial arts. So you'll normally just rely on martial arts, which is why monk isn't, really working with this fighting style. You're going to have clerics that could be using 2-weapon fighting, but most of the time they're better off for service with a great sword. Most of the time they're better off using like their spell casting with cantrips and stuff. I dug into like, is there a thing for Bladesinger, a real payoff for 2-weapon fighting? The answer is not really. So like, you can do it on some of those classes if you want to. I think these are going to be the highlights of like the classes that actually have synergy with 2-weapon fighting overall.
All right, we'll do it alphabetically so people reading along can follow more easily.
Wait, we'll start with barbarians then. Barbarians I like 2-weapon fighting a lot on actually. It's one of my favorite like looks is just an angry person throwing giant things at people, right? And the neat thing about it is rage gives you a bonus to damage on every single hit you make. So you're incentivized to make more attacks. The other thing Barbarian has kind of going for it is they don't always have a great place to put their bonus action. Once you rage, sometimes you're just like, all right, well, now my bonus action is just dead every turn. Unless you're like Berserker or something where you obviously have one. Some subclasses get obvious directions for bonus actions, but others don't. If you're one of those ones that don't, offhand attacks, that's an extra bonus instance of your rage damage. Even though you don't get the fighting style, that's an extra damage, or an extra 2 damage, 3 damage, 4 damage that adds up over time. I think it's a cool little play pattern, just be the flurry, throw a bunch of hammers at people like Dwarven, Barbarian. I like that a lot. Plus reckless attack. That also gives you advantage on all attacks you make, not just the ones you make with the attack action. So if you make the attack action, recklessly attacking with 2 of them, your offhand attack sure is going to have that advantage as well. All upside for making as many attacks as possible. One other big pillar of note is Path of the Giant really furthers this playstyle if you want it to, because it lets you add rage damage to ranged weapons whenever you throw them. Normally, if you throw hammers and stuff at people, you don't add your rage modifier to them. Path of the Giant, you can now. And 2-weapon fighting really likes light thrown weapons, so you can do all kinds of stuff if you want to with Path of the Giant and light weapons, offhand attack kind of stuff. I like that design and premise a lot. I think there's some cool room to explore doing 2-weapon fighting stuff, like take a level 1 fighter for the fighting style that you want and just really go in on throwing as many hammers as I can at people. Or hand axes, as that's the higher damage option.
There are other options to throw.
Yeah, you can go do the crusher stuff with that if you want to, push people around. You're getting bonus damage from your you can recall the weapons to your hand with Path of Giants. Lots of cool stuff there. You have any feelings, thoughts on that entire identity of raging 2-weapon barbarians?
Yeah, I'm already a big fan of Path of the Giant. That's it's got a lot of fun things in it, and this is part of it. I don't have it up right now, but you can call your weapons back into your hand. That's neat. Anything else? They don't get like a weapon size increase ability or thing.
That matters? I don't think so. I'll double check real quick. But for the most part, it's the bonus. You have bonus damage on elemental on hit with the elemental cleaver, and you are allowed to add rage damage to your weapons. You do eventually
Yeah.
get this bonus action to throw creatures around if you want to, but I don't think, like, by 10th level, I'm not that upset that that's what's competing for my bonus action. And you'll still have plenty
But
of rounds
you
where you're
don't get
having
to
use
like
them again.
weaponize them though, right?
As a bonus action while raging, you can choose a medium or smaller creature and hurl it. If at the end of the movement it's thrown into a surface of liquid that can't support it, it falls and takes damage. So it kind of weaponizes it, but
it's not like I'm gonna replace my axe with this guy and throw it at somebody else. Yeah, that's what. All right.
I mean, as a DM, I'm absolutely letting that ride. That sounds
Yeah,
incredible. But I don't think rules is written as much here to support that.
Okay.
Moving
All
into
right.
Bard, Bard surprisingly has a decent amount of options that support 2-weapon fighting, namely because swords really, it gives you the 2-weapon fighting style if you want it, which is pretty cool. So, like, while most of the Bard colleges are going to be supportive full caster bards, if you go College of Swords or College of Whispers, I think you actually are set up to do a lot of cool 2-weapon fighting stuff. I like that a lot. I think they're like, you can do some cute things where you get the 2-weapon fighting style off of College of Swords, you're using your bonus action to make those attack rolls, and you get these dice pools that let you do these cool maneuvers on your attacks, basically. It's a neat little direction to explore. I think you can have a lot of fun with it. Whispers
What
also
about?
go ahead.
I'm sorry. All right, no, go ahead and talk about Whispers first.
The Whispers looks a little bit more like Rogue, and you get this, whenever you deal damage with a weapon, you can do 2d6 damage bonus with it, so you get like this effect that lets you kind of sneak attack, pseudo sneak attack. You want to hit that a lot of the time, and having an offhand attack lets you do that, and because your Bardic Inspiration is getting sunk into doing the 2d6 damage, you aren't missing Bardic Inspiration bonus actions, so you might as well have an offhand dagger as more chances to get that bonus damage on a turn if you want it really badly. But I like.
All right. I was going to ask the other like fighting inclined bard subclass Valor. There's nothing going on with this for that one.
Nothing that really pushes it more so into like the territory of 2-weapon fighting, right? Valor bards are mainly just any kind of fighting style will work equally effectively. None of them really get standout options that make it specifically better with 2-weapon fighting, I don't think. Like combat inspiration is still once you use your bonus action for those kinds of things, so you're still like ideally using your bonus action to grant other people boons so they get better hits and stuff, and you're going to be using great swords or sharp bow or longbows or whatever and that kind of stuff. I don't think
that kind of works against
incentive.
2-weapon fighting.
Yeah, right. Like you could do Valor with 2-weapon fighting, but there'd be a little bit more tension there. Whereas these are the ones I think actively reward you for doing 2-weapon fighting.
I like this on a bard. It feels kind of bardy. They're full casters, so you don't really need to worry about as much about like fully optimizing your weapon attacks. So you can do other fun things with it and not feel too bad.
And definitely, like, this is where Warcaster, I think, is going to also shine, right? You can still cast your big explosive 9th level spells when you need to, but you also can be like, yeah, it's okay, I'm going to do just like a good chunk of damage for this turn in combat. It's probably all of these kinds of fighting, like, this fighting style is going to really shine between 1st and 9th level. Past that, you're going to notice it isn't scaling nearly as well as many other kinds of attack rolls are. You'll even, like, start to compare this to things like Sharpshooter, and you'll be like, oh, this is not it. But again, 99% of tables, you're going to have a blast doing this. I don't think you need to be worried that much on how much comparatively lower the damage is than some of the optimized stuff.
Cool.
Moving into Druid. Druid is an option I wrote off whenever I was first doing this, and I was like, I should do my due diligence to check over these. Are there anything cool that you can do with 2-weapon fighting in Druid? There is, actually. I was surprised.
Yay.
College of Spores actually has... Druids get scimitar proficiency, and College of Spores gives you an on-hit damage bump, and there aren't ways to get extra attack on that. Except with 2-weapon fighting. So you can use 2 scimitars, make an attack roll, get a d6 plus mod plus d6, and then do an offhand attack at the round after you set up your halo, and get that bonus double dip damage.
There you go, that's
cool.
something.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Definitely counts.
Again, yeah, Warcaster is a thing you want on that kind of character type. If you wanted to do a multi-attacking druid that's like running in there with your 2 scimitars and stuff. I mean, the meat of your character is still, especially in the mid-tiers, is going to be your full casting, but you'll have no problem spending rounds to be like, yeah, all right, I'm just going to make 4 attacks for bonus 40, or 2 attacks for bonus 46-ish damage. That seems fine. Comparable to, if not a lot better than a single cantrip, for sure.
Too bad you can't get 2 like mini shillelaghs.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
You do it on clubs?
I don't think
you can do it on clubs.
Oh yeah, but you can't have 2 going at the same time.
Yeah, that's also true. But let me check Shillelagh. A wood of a club or quarterstaff you're holding to be with nature's power for the duration. You can use your spellcasting instead of strength for the attack rolls and melee weapons of the weapon. And it doesn't. The spell ends if you cast it again. So you could have 1 club with Shillelagh and 1 club without Shillelagh, or 1 scimitar or whatever, and then you would be able to use your wisdom modifier for one of the attacks and dex for the other. So like you could conceivably have on your Shillelagh club be getting the D4 +3 plus D6, and you have a higher chance to hit, and then maybe you only have like a +2 dex or whatever, and you put that in your offhand because you're not getting the offhand damage anyway for your
Yeah.
wisdom mod. That's kind of cute. Good point out.
All right,
Can't have
thanks.
more than one, but yeah, Shillelagh does come into a factor there. We good with Druid? It's a cute little option.
Yeah,
It's fairly narrow.
that's more druid than I expected we'd talk about with this.
Same.
Yeah.
I actually thought there would be more with fighter than there is, and I think that kind of highlights where this archetype is a little bit missing in the supportive build direction. There's not like a lot of feats you can dedicate to it. There's not a huge like swath of opportunity for 2-weapon fighting, especially again past first, second, third level. Fighter I think is emblematic of that. So you get your fight. You have the 2 fighting style options that ranger and fighter both get for throne and 2-weapon fighting. And you have all the proficiencies in the world. You can do the dex stuff, you can do the strike stuff. World's your oyster. Fighters have really start taking either. The only real other boon you get, though, is through Champion, which gives you a second fighting style. So if you wanted both 2-weapon and throne weapon, you could get both by just staying in fighter and doing it that way, which I think is not where you want to be, but it is where you can be if you'd like. So, that's kind of novel. But beyond that, you're just the bare bones generic 2-weapon fighting character. You will do fine doing fighter things.
Yeah, because fighter. If you're a fighter, you want to get as much damage out of your attacks as possible. This isn't really the way to do it. But champion also, that's the one with the improved criticals, right? Well, so there. If you're making more attacks, then there's more opportunities for improved criticals.
Yeah, but they're just relatively lower criticals, right? Like I would rather try and get those criticals with a great sword. So that's
me
doubling
too,
2d6. But I think that's how that works. I could be wrong. In any case, there's like a lot of fighting options. Like Echo Knight wants you to use your bonus action on other things, and there's going to be there's just as a pervasive thought. Remember that if your bonus action wants to be dedicated to something else, if you've got like a companion that you control with your bonus action, if you've got some other effect like rogues that have dedicated like mastermind rogues, for example, they want to be using their bonus action every single round on 1 or 2 specific things, I think you're going to have a hard time fitting 2-weapon fighting on that character sheet. And there are some fighter archetypes that want to do that. Samurai gives you that bonus action to do a bunch of awesome attacks, right? There are those kinds of things littered about the place. I think Samurai's bonus action to it. But yeah,
just to be clear, how this works with extra attack, your full attack is your extra attack, and then you're still only getting the 1 bonus action 2-weapon thing, right?
Correct. What all these rules do, the only way this functions, you take the attack action. Doesn't care about how many attacks you take with that attack action. You take the attack action. As long as you've taken that attack action with then have made at least 1 attack with a light melee weapon, you can make an offhand attack using a different light melee weapon. So it's always 1, never improves with extra attack. It just checks. It's like, did you do a thing? If you did the thing, you get the 1 extra bonus attack.
All right. So if I'm a fighter, I've got 2 scimitars. I've got 4 attacks. Yeah, and then with the other hand. Yes.
Okay. If you have your 4th extra attack, you will use your attack action to make those 4 attacks. As long as you're making them with a light melee weapon, you then can use your bonus action to make 1 additional attack with the other light melee weapon.
Okay.
Moving right along, Paladin is the next class we can talk about, and I also surprisingly like 2-weapon fighting on Paladins because I like more opportunities to Divine Smite, and this gives you an extra bonus action way to Divine Smite. That's kind of cool. I don't think there are a lot of good bonus actions on Paladin, generally speaking, anyway. So this is a extra way that I can leverage that ability. I'm into that. Oh, the Vengeance gives you cool things like Vow of Enmity and Hunter's Mark, where you can do bonus damage on hit, so it'll reward more attacks more than anything else. And there aren't a ton of ways to get extra attacks on Paladin beyond the 2 you get from extra attack, right? So, like, having any extra way to give me 1 more chance of doing a big Divine Smite, 1 more chance of getting, an extra proc of my Hunter's Mark from both events, an extra proc, or an extra advantage from Vow of Enmity or whatever, I'm into all of that. Now, you don't get the fighting styles within Paladin for it. You have to take different fighting styles because they don't get 2-weapon or throne weapon, but there's still a decent amount to consider for at least having a set of light weapons on you for this reason. Having a pair of hand axes on you is a great reason it's a great thing to consider doing.
I mean, you can get it through that feat, right? Fighting an issue.
If you want to.
Yeah. It's kind of a big ask, though.
It is. I also think you could just like ask your DM, hey, can I take this fighting style from a different class because that's my build, and they will almost certainly say yes because it's just worse than what else you could be doing. So, not rules as written. That's going to have to be a DM dependent kind of thing. But again, you don't need it. I think you generally can just like take defense, grab 2 hand axes. If you want to just have a character that makes a lot of attacks and tries to make a lot of divine smites, you can absolutely do that with a lot of paladin subclasses. And you won't you really won't feel like you're missing that much whenever most of your damage is loaded in the Divine Smite damage anyway, right?
Yeah.
The iconic 2-weapon fighting class is Ranger. That's what we got next. And it has got a surprising amount of contention with it just because all of its damage setups are bonus actions. So like Favored Foe, Hunter's Mark, a lot of the companion stuff is all based on your bonus actions.
Mm.
So it is a little bit clunky with 2-weapon fighting. That being said, I still think it's pretty decent. I actually think Favored Foe. Hold on, let me double check Ranger. I think I'm misremembering because I know Hunter's Mark is bonus action setup. Favored Foe might be whenever you deal damage. Let me double check. When you hit a creature with an attack roll, yeah, okay, great, never mind. So with Favored Foe specifically, the new updated option from Toss's Cauldron and everything, you don't even have to spend bonus actions. You can just mark the target as your favorite enemy a couple of times, and you get some bonus damage and all of your attacks, the first of your attacks. Why are you like this, Wizards? Never mind. I take it all back. Restart, Ranger. Favored Foe doesn't care at all about if you're making a million attacks because it only triggers once a turn.
That's
Why do they
unfortunate.
do that?
No, I don't know.
All right, hold on. I have to delete something in this article.
Yeah.
So Hunter's Mark is the actual one that does proc on every single attack you make, and that one does cost your bonus action. So you can like set up a Hunter's Mark, make 2 attacks with your regular attack action, and then next turn, as long as you can keep concentration on that Hunter's Mark, make 3 attacks and get a bonus d6 out of the deal. And that is more juice from your Hunter's Mark. That's kind of
Yep.
novel, something kind of notable. And again, this is an archetype that gets both the fighting styles, throw weapon, and 2 weapons. So you can do the stuff with Ranger that you'd like. You probably want the dex-based stuff. You probably want sword swords, scimitars, daggers, that kind of thing, because you're gonna have a longbow too. There's no reason not to. You can do the 2-weapon fighting stuff pretty cleanly in Ranger. They also get a lot of ability options, so I'm gonna make a note for myself to edit this real quick, because I don't have this currently down. You get like the Zephyr Strike, which lets you quickly move and navigate around a battlefield. You get abilities that give you bonuses to speed and teleports and stuff like that. That plays into the 2-weapon fighting fantasy because it's kind of Ranger's melee option, at least the one that they're sold. So you can do a lot of decent stuff, I think, with Ranger. It's always going to be a little more clunky than I want. It's always going to have that, like, oh, right, this is my bonus action this turn. All right, I can do it next turn. Surprisingly challenging as far as making that come together, especially compared to like Paladin and Barbarian, which have no problem making 2-weapon fighting work.
Yeah, because Ranger, like I said, that's like the default option when you think of 2-weapon fighting.
That's Drift Jordan, right? Like that is that exact archetype. That's the big name drow with the Panther companion. That's Ranger. Now, fun fact, Beastmaster is even worse with it because that also your bonus action is commanding your beast. So like Drift Jordan just doesn't work as a character, which I think is kind of fun. At least the short swords or the scimitars don't. Anyway.
All right, well, moving on.
Rogue is an option that I think if you want to juice your rogue a little bit more, this is a real thing you should consider, is remember that you can 2-weapon fighting. I'm not saying invest in it, but keep in the back of your mind that, okay, this is an option I have at my disposal whenever I'm in the thick of things, whenever I have to be in melee range. Because if you miss with your attack, you having a backup way to get your sneak attack damage, very relevant. Very, very relevant. If you miss with your dagger attack whenever you are in the corner and you don't have any way else to deal sneak attack damage that turn, you feel terrible. If you can rip out another dagger and go for it again, even if you're not on your dex mod of that damage, you're still getting the bulk of your damage, which is the 66 dice, the 8d6 dice, right? That's all going to matter a lot on rogues. So I wouldn't advise like looking for 2-weapon fighting or taking dual wielder. It is definitely a thing on rogue, especially if you're doing melee ranged rogue shenanigans that you want to make sure you're aware of. And you'll feel a little bit more powerful than you did yesterday if you just start incorporating. Make sure if I have a dagger out, I draw another dagger the turn after.
All right. I noticed you didn't include any subclasses here. There's no way the thief can leverage their item thing for drawing weapons. Is that?
It directly competes with your bonus action, right? So like
Okay.
a lot of rogues have a good place to put their bonus action, right? You got the fast hands is throwing acid vials and stuff. You've got all of them just have steady aim. All of them just have high disengage or dash, all that kind of stuff, right? So it is really, really hard for specifically rogue to build around this because you've got a myriad of bonus action options. Like if we look at even Swashbuckler, they got
that was the other one I was going to bring up, Swashbuckler. That's really unfortunate that nothing works well with that because this is what I picture a Swashbuckler is, 2 rapiers fighting, 2 guys on a ship's mast or something.
And fun fact, all of your features don't work if that's the case, because there are
Yeah.
2 ally enemies within 5 feet of each other. So just the entire subclass is still trash. Who would have guessed? Swashbuckler, what garbage? Doesn't even work with 2-weapon fighting.
Ah,
That option's horrendously bad. So terrible. Oh, Swashbuckler's awful.
we got a video on it. Go
Me
see.
too. I failed it and it deserved the F. I actually feel bad about giving Mastermind an F. I think that probably deserves a D. Yeah, I know. That's how bad Swashbuckler is. We have Warlock as the last real option here that I think has some supportive stuff. I actually think Warlock looks very close to Ranger, but had a little bit better support, which is weird because
Yes.
you have some more durability in combat. You got more options for durability in combat. So you have, instead of Hunter's Mark, you have Hex, so you can put down that thing. You take things like Eldritch Mind to maintain concentration on it a little bit better if you want, and you don't have to spend feats on that. And then you have, you know, the 2 hand axes that you're going to town with if you want to do strength build. You can do Dex daggers if you want to do the Dex build. Fiend Patron gives you the ability to, like, you want to kill things so you can get temporary hit points that give you durability. Having an extra chance at killing something means, oh, I dropped it to 2, fine, execute it, and then I get the bonus hit points. That's kind of relevant, and I think that you're going to consider doing. Hexblades open up more weapon proficiencies to you as well, so if you want to do 2 scimitars, if you want to do 2 hand axes, if you want to do 2 of whatever, you can do that with Hexblades Curse. Plus, it has the Hexblades Curse for bonus damage on hit. You can do more of that with 2-weapon fighting, all that good stuff, right? I think there's a decent amount of Warlocks. I would, if you're a dex-based Warlock specifically, I would consider getting a pair of short swords. I would consider getting a pair of daggers, whatever you have the proficiencies for, and leveraging those is like a decent option in combat all the time.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, I like it a lot on Warlock, surprisingly. And that's more or less
that's
it.
kind of surprising.
Yeah, I mean, you are pretty decent at attacking as Warlock. You'll get Thirsting Blade if you're doing Pact of the Blade stuff. You'll make a lot of melee attacks. Oh, pardon. You're kind of, again, you're like a Paladin adjacent kind of archetype, and that can work with 2-weapon fighting if you wanted to, especially if you like for some reason took the Eldritch Invocation lets you smite your spell slots away, which word of advice, don't. All things considered, 2-weapon fighting it's not that complicated for the most part. If you go into it remembering my weapons need to be light, and if I make an attack roll by attack action that uses that light weapon, I can attack with a different light weapon. That is the vast majority of the text here. You do have to remember you don't add your damage modifier to the second attack roll, but beyond that, you're ready to go. Most characters can be upgraded by just having a pair of daggers on them so that, especially in the low tiers, if you're caught with your pants down, you can at least make a swing with a bonus D4. And that's not the end of the world. So get a little bit more juice on your sheet that you had yesterday. That's pretty relevant. You also can build into it as much as you want. So
something to consider, you know, anytime you're playing, if you haven't used your bonus action, have a dagger, throw it.
If you've attacked with a light weapon, why not? Chuck it out there. The throat is a really, really big relevant point too, Bob. Good point. If you've, like, let's say you kill something with a scimitar, you go, well, I don't have anything else to do with my bonus action. Pull the dagger out of your boot and chuck it at somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Why not? That's going to be extra damage that you get from somewhere.
Agreed.
I like 2-weapon fighting a lot. I would recommend trying out builds with it, especially low tier builds. If you're going to be playing like levels 1 through 8, that's where you expect the game to go at most. You will have a blast doing 2-weapon fighting stuff. And most of the classes, even classes we didn't cover, can support these kinds of builds. You'll be able to do the cool things well enough that you're going to have a fine time playing any kind of martial character with it.
Yes, worth repeating one more time. Anyone can do this. Any class. All right. Yeah, you're not going to get optimal amazing damage out of that thrown dagger, but it's leaving hit points on the table if you don't.
Yeah. And
all right, well, that was
another small thing to consider is out the gate with 2-weapon fighting as your fighting style, you do genuinely have a really powerful level 1. Your levels 1, 2, and 3, whenever you have a bonus action attack, feel amazing compared to a lot of other people, right? If you watch that fighter go up and make one attack with their greatsword and miss, and you go, oh, that's okay, I have 2 attacks, so even if I do miss, I still have a second chance of hitting them, you feel way, way better. So I will say this is genuinely powerful levels 1 through 3, especially if you're not dealing with variant human fighters with builds that are shoved into being amazing out the gate.
All right. Well, that was 2-weapon fighting. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. Let us know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. And yeah, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.